Good morning, everyone. Oops, that's a little loud. Turn down the volume a little bit. It is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV. That is live at the White House. I think President Bukele of El Salvador is not there yet and is about to show up. I think that's what's happening. Try to make sure here. Yes, so we are waiting for him to arrive, and then we're supposed to get some video of them talking. So I'm going to show you that. And, you know, El Salvador and the president of El Salvador has been in the American news lately because President Trump has sent several plane loads of what the U.S. claims are gang members to El Salvador, and there's been some controversy over that. So we're gonna get you updated on that. But I think, if I have this right, that they're waiting for him to arrive. That's what I'm seeing. Hold on a second here. Let me check something out here. But there'll be some, they're going to do a joint appearance where they talk. Hang on one second. Yeah, they haven't, I don't think he's arrived yet. So I think, if I have this right, well, I'm going to not change it. One of our viewers said, did the person get returned? So one reason that this has been in the news a lot lately, President Bukele in El Salvador, in the American news, is that there is a man, an El Salvadoran migrant who was living in Maryland, who, I believe it was in March, he got sent by mistake to El Salvador, to this notorious prison there. The Trump administration has said they did it by mistake, because a judge had ordered that he not be sent to El Salvador. But now the administration has not brought him back yet. And the Supreme Court has said that the Trump administration needs to facilitate his being brought back to the U.S. But he has not been brought back to the U.S. So we're going to get you an update on that as well. But we'll be hearing from them. There'll be live video. It'll either be live video of them in the White House, or sometimes, actually, what they sometimes do, when President Trump has a world leader coming, they will record some sort of. They'll do some kind of appearance, and then we'll see the footage of it after. But we're supposed to see them speak. All right, let me get you some updates here. Hey, thanks to, we're just coming over to this because I was just covering the Blue Origin space launch. We just covered that. Hey, thanks to Beth Mythical, who's moderating on YouTube. I appreciate it. Thank you to our moderators over on Twitch. We have there right now Matthew Kohai 3, thank you. Also, thank you to Linda Belk, Larry, and Misha moderating on X. Thanks to our Facebook moderators. Margaret Riley is over there. Thanks to our subscriber, Jennifer Ellers. Jennifer says, I hope that they brought that man back with them. I haven't heard any reporting that he's with President Bukele, but you never know. Kay Lowry, Bonnie, Margaret Riley moderating. Thanks, Rita Evans-Lang, for subscribing too. Okay, so let's get you some background on what's going on as we wait for him to. Again, I think he hasn't shown up yet. So what I'll show you right now is, well, what I'm going to talk about right now while we're waiting for him to show up is, you can see here, hold on, Trump to meet with El Salvador's president amid questions over deportations. That is from Reuters there. So while we're waiting for Bukele to arrive, let me talk about that a little bit. Reuters says President Trump meets today with El Salvador President Nayib Bukele, a leader praised by the Trump administration for opening his country's prison system to alleged gang members and detainees Trump wants out of the United States. The Trump administration has deported hundreds of Venezuelans to El Salvador under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act, including a Maryland resident that the Trump administration acknowledged deporting there by mistake. Trump, who came into office in January promising to reform U.S. immigration policy, has found a kindred spirit for that effort in Bukele, says Reuters. The migrants El Salvador accepts from the U.S. are housed in a high-security prison critics say engages in human rights abuses. Now, Trump is supposed to meet Bukele today. It was supposed to start at 11 a.m., but it's 11:06 a.m. Eastern time right now. But I think they are still waiting for Bukele to arrive. President Trump said yesterday, I think of Bukele, I think he's doing a fantastic job, and he's taking care of a lot of problems that we really wouldn't be able to take care of from a cost standpoint, referring to the cost of imprisoning them in El Salvador. President Trump said he's been amazing. We have some very bad people in that prison. People that should never have been allowed into our country. People that murdered, drug dealers. Some of the worst people on earth are in that prison, and he's able to do that. Pressed on whether Trump had concerns about alleged human rights abuses at the mega prison, Trump said, "No, I don't see it. I don't see that," he said. Let me just read you a little more of this from Reuters. The U.S. on Saturday deported 10 more people it alleges are gang members to El Salvador, said Secretary of State Rubio, who called the alliance between Trump and Bukele an example for security and prosperity in our hemisphere. Lawyers and relatives of the migrants held in El Salvador that have been sent there from the U.S. say they are not gang members and had no opportunity to contest the U.S. government's assertion that they were. The Trump administration says it vetted migrants to ensure they belong to Tren de Aragua, which it labels a terrorist organization. Last month, after a judge said flights carrying migrants processed under the Alien Enemies Act should return to the U.S., Bukele wrote, "Oopsie, too late" on social media alongside footage showing men being hustled off a plane in the dark of night. The case of Climar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland resident who was sent to El Salvador's so-called terrorism confinement center on March 15th, despite an order protecting him from deportation, has drawn particular attention. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld, that means they supported an order from Judge Paula Zenas directing the Trump administration to facilitate and effectuate his return, but said the term effectuate was unclear and might exceed her authority. Trump told reporters on Friday that his administration would bring back the man if the Supreme Court directed it to. However, in a court filing on Sunday, the administration said it was not obligated to help him get out of prison in El Salvador. So, still unclear whether what's going to happen to that man who was living in Maryland, who the administration said they mistakenly sent to El Salvador, and who the Supreme Court said the administration had to facilitate his return from El Salvador. And I think we're waiting for Bukele to show up right now. Let's see here. Deb N says, I doubt the Maryland man is alive. I believe in some sort of filing in the last couple days that the U.S. government said he was still alive. I'll try to get you more on that. Sentient Cannabis thinks being sent to any prison without due process is highly problematic for people who enjoy democracy. Charlie T thinks due process equals entering legally. I don't know that the Constitution says that, but I'm not a legal expert. We'll talk more about this. Relax Mello says, I appreciate any leader being willing to leave their country and meet in America to negotiate, regardless whether I agree with the person or not. Let's talk some more about this. Here's an update from AP here. You'll see it in a second. Trump administration offers no details on mistakenly deported man after court ruling. AP says a federal judge on Friday lambasted a government lawyer who could not explain what, if anything, President Trump's administration has done to arrange for the return of a Maryland man who was mistakenly deported last month to a notorious prison in El Salvador. The U.S. government attorney struggled to provide any information about the whereabouts of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, despite Thursday's ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court that the Trump administration must facilitate his return. U.S. District Judge Paul Zinist ordered the U.S. to provide daily updates on the status of its plans to bring Abrego Garcia back. Will we hear more about this from President Trump and President Bukele today? By the way, thanks so much to Jesse's Girl. I really appreciate that. Jesse's Girl, thank you. Jesse's Girl. Thanks also, Simp Nasty Scrimp. I appreciate that. Let me show you some more updates from AP here. While I believe we are waiting for Bukele to get there, you can see here a key ally in Trump's migrant crackdown is coming for a visit. What might El Salvador's Bukele get? There is a photo from 2019 of President Trump meeting with Bukele. AP says President Trump is hosting Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, at the White House today as the small Central American nation becomes a critical linchpin of the U.S. administration's mass deportation operations. Since March, El Salvador has accepted from the U.S. more than 200 Venezuelan immigrants, whom the Trump administration officials have accused of gang activity and violent crimes, and placed them inside the country's notorious maximum security gang prison just outside of the capital, San Salvador. It is also holding a Maryland man who the Trump administration admits was wrongly deported, but has not been returned to the U.S. despite court orders to do so. That has made Bukele, who remains extremely popular in El Salvador, due in part to the crackdown on the country's powerful street gangs, a vital ally for the Trump administration, which has offered little evidence for its claims that the Venezuelan immigrants were in fact gang members, nor has it released names of those deported. Asked whether he has any concerns about the prison there where deportees are being held, Trump told reporters yesterday that Bukele was doing a fantastic job. Bukele struck a deal under which the U.S. will pay about $6 million for El Salvador to imprison the Venezuelan immigrants for 1 year. When a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to turn around a flight carrying those immigrants already en route to El Salvador, Bukele wrote on social media, "Oopsie, too late." Though other judges had ruled against the Trump administration this month, the Supreme Court cleared the way for Trump to use the Alien Enemies Act, an 18th century wartime law, to deport the immigrants. The justices did insist, however, that the immigrants get a court hearing before being removed from the U.S., which I don't believe the immigrants removed to El Salvador so far have gotten. Trump has said openly, says AP, that he would also favor El Salvador taking American citizens who have committed violent crimes, although he added, "I'd only do it according to the law." It is unclear how lawful U.S. citizens could be deported elsewhere. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has called for the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland resident and Salvadoran citizen who had an immigration court order preventing his deportation to El Salvador over fears of gang persecution. The White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said the administration's job is to facilitate the return, not to effectuate the return. But Trump later indicated on Friday that he would return Abrego Garcia to the U.S. if the High Court's justices said bring him back. Government lawyers indicated in a legal filing Saturday that Abrego Garcia remains in El Salvador, but did not detail what, if any, steps the administration is taking to return him to the U.S. In its required daily status update yesterday, the government essentially stated it had nothing to add beyond Saturday's filing. Stephen Miller, a top White House aide, signaled today that the U.S. President Trump would not be asking Bukele to return Abrego Garcia to the U.S. It's up to El Salvador and the government and the people of El Salvador what the fate of their own citizens is, Stephen Miller said. We can't extradite citizens of foreign countries to our country over the objection of those countries. AP also says while Bukele's crackdown on gangs has popular support in El Salvador, the country has lived under a state of emergency that suspends some basic rights for 3 years. Bukele built the massive prison located just outside San Salvador to hold those accused of gang affiliation under his crackdown. So we are waiting for Bukele to get there. Again, Bukele and Trump are supposed to meet today, and we're supposed to see some of that meeting, video of it. I see some people with flags coming. Is Bukele showing up now? Let's see. No, they're just walking around. Well, we'll see. Hold on. Maybe he's coming right now. I see flags. I see movement.
Coach, ready, run.
Hey, a quick thank you to Chris and also Marcus Casa Magica Photography and Kenneth Colton and Jesse's Girl. Thank you. Maybe he's arriving right now. Okay, I'm seeing activity. It looks like maybe he's about to show up. Pre-breakfast bananas said, did Bukele bring the person Abrego Garcia back? I've not heard any reporting that happened. Did I get his name right? Abrigo Garcia? Abrigo Garcia, yes. Abrigo Garcia? We are watching live footage here from the White House. All right, a lot of activity going on in this shot now. Hey, thank you to, Temi Dank. Did I read this right? Temi Dank for the gift membership. Thank you. And thanks to Lula A. Bell, our member. So, again, there's going to be footage today of them in the meeting together in the Oval Office. Sometimes when that happens, they take a bunch of questions, and Trump will take a bunch of questions. So we'll be showing that to you. I don't know how long it'll take to get that footage. But that's kind of the most important thing, I think, that we'll be showing you, is that, because we'll hear what they have to say. Sorry if I'm yawning, I had to wake up early to cover the space launch. We already did a whole stream before this. Yes, busy Monday, says Michael McIsaac. I don't know if Kristen Gates is watching. Thanks to Kristen for the donation. Thanks again to our moderators, Paul Anderson, Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley on Facebook, on Twitch, Matthew Kohai 3, Linda Bell Clary, Misha on X, Beth Mythical on YouTube, thank you. Maybe there'll be some announcement today from President Trump and President Bukele about Abrego Garcia. Will they talk about Bitcoin? Maybe. Bukele is a big supporter of Bitcoin. He made Bitcoin legal tender in El Salvador. Under him, they passed a law in El Salvador. Also, the El Salvador has purchased a bunch of Bitcoin. show you for a second what it looks like there. There you go. Up, I'm seeing the camera pan over. Is the car about to come in? Peter Draw says, I bet standing there in that uniform is hot. Nick Nembus says, wow, looks official. Marcus says, Americans have a sense for ceremonies. Hey, thanks so much to Sharameen. Sharameen, thank you. Also, La Calma. Thank you, La Calma, for your support. La Calma says shameful policy. We are waiting for President Bukele of El Salvador to arrive at the White House, where he will be meeting with President Trump. Thank you, SoCal SoCo, but if you can't obey the rules of the chat, you will not be allowed to chat. So I appreciate your support, but you really need to, like everybody else, obey the rules of the chat. Thanks, Green Giant, our new member. Thanks, Confidence in God, our member. Thanks, Confidence in God. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, I see the car coming in about now. Here we go. I believe President Bukele is arriving now. There is President Trump. There's President Trump.
Ready pop? Ready open?
Here we go. There is President Bukele meeting President
Ready,
Trump.
close.
Well, so they've met before, but saying hi.
Ready, shut. Ready, face. Forward march.
There they are. Now they're going to meet. So, hey, thank you, Widow Unscripted, our member. See some other people going in there. Thank you, Owl Hippie, by the way. Thank you, Owl Hippie. Simp Nasty said, "Now we wait." So, what they're gonna meet, but at some point we are going to get video of them, either video or a live shot of them talking and maybe answering questions. Sometimes Trump will take a lot of questions in these situations. So that's really the reason why we're covering this, is to see what they have to say. Now, I don't know how long we're going to have to wait for that. We'll have to see how long that takes. Let me see if I can check my schedule here. So, I mean, according to the schedule said that 5 minutes after Bukele arrives, he is supposed to meet in the Oval Office with President Trump. And then there's supposed to be a lunch. Now, if they keep to that schedule, then it shouldn't be too long before we see President Trump and President Bukele. Although, who knows, they could always switch the schedule up. But, again, I'm looking at the original schedule from the White House for today, and it literally says 5 minutes after the arrival of Bukele, they would be meeting in the Oval Office. One of our viewers said, nom, nom, nom. Hold on a second here.
Oh, forward, forward.
Oh, that's weird. Now they're showing it again? What's happening here? It's like they're rerunning the video.
Salute.
Now they're rerunning the video. This is not live. They're rerunning it, I think. Yeah. Oh, hold on. Look, look at. We're at the Oval Office. We're at the Oval Office.
Do you mind if I get ahead of you? Because I'm going to go to your left side. Okay.
We are at the Oval. Oh, we were inside. It's going back and forth.
Close. Ready, shut.
Video's going back and forth.
Ready, face.
Now that's not live. That is not live. That's a replay. That's a few minutes ago. But we did see the camera inside. So hang on a moment. We should give it a second here. Give it a second here. That's a good sign that we saw that camera inside, though, I think. So hopefully we'll see them inside soon and hear from them. All right, let's, while we're waiting to hear, I think I want to say soon, El Salvador President Bukele appears with Trump. We'll get that soon. Give me 1 second. Give me one moment. 1 moment. We'll talk about some background here while we're waiting to see them. Try to get one thing here. Here's a little background from AFP. President Trump today is hosting El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele, the self-described world's coolest dictator, who is now the U.S. leader's key ally in a precedent-breaking push to deport illegal immigrants to a notorious Salvadoran prison. Bukele, hold on a second here. Bukele, says AFP, known for his stylish dress sense and social media savvy, is broadly popular at home for clamping down on once rampant drug gangs that terrorize the Central American country. However, he is accused of overseeing mass human rights violations, epitomized by a huge, brutal prison known as CCOT. Oh, and look, it's the White House. It's Oval Office. It's the Oval Office. Hey, look, guys. It's the Oval Office. All right. We're at the Oval Office live. They stopped the audio for a second. Oh, hold on. I stopped the audio for a second. I'll put it back on for you. There they are. Here we go. There's J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. Is that Pam Bondi there?
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to have a friend of mine because we went through this together and got along very well for my entire period of time. So I knew him as a very young man. Now he's just a young man. And he's done a fantastic job. Mr. President, it's an honor to have you.
Thank you.
You're doing incredibly for your country. And we appreciate working with you because you want to stop crime, and so do we. And it's very, very effective. And I want to just say hello to the people of El Salvador and say they have one hell of a president. Okay? And I mean that, and I know him well. I know him as a very young man, Marco, even younger than you. You know, he started pretty young.
He'll always be younger.
Young at heart. But I want to thank you for the great job you're doing. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to be here in the Oval Office with the President and leader of the free world. We're very happy, and we're very eager to help. We know that you have a crime problem, a terrorism problem that you need help with. And we're a small country, but if we can help, we will do it. And we actually turned murder capital of the world. That was the journalists call it,
Right.
murder capital of the world, into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. And if sometimes they say that we imprisoned thousands. I like to say that we actually liberated millions. So,
That's very good. Who gave him that line? Do you think I can use that?
Yes. And in fact, Mr. President, you have 350 million people to liberate.
Yeah.
But to liberate 350 million people, you have to imprison some. That's the way it works, right? You cannot just free the criminals and think crime is going to go down magically. You have to imprison them so you can liberate 350 million Americans that are asking for the end of crime and the end of terrorism. And it can be done. I mean, you're doing it already. And I'm sure that people have seen the change in the streets. A long way to go because you're just initiating your second term. But it's clear that with the numbers at the border, even in Democrat-run cities, they get a help from the work you're doing. So I'm really happy to be here, honored, and eager to help.
Well, we had a terrible thing happen. We had an administration that allowed people to come in freely into our country from not only South America, but from all over the world, many from the Congo in Africa, Asia, all over the world, Europe, rough parts of Europe. And they came from prisons, and they came from mental institutions, and they came from gangs, and the gangs of Venezuela and other places. And hundreds of thousands and even millions of them came. 21 million people altogether, but many of the people that came, just a tremendous percentage of them were criminals, in some cases violent criminals. We had 11,088 known murderers. Half of them murdered more than one person. This was allowed by a man who, what he did to our country is just unbelievable. So we're straightening it out. We're getting them out. But what they did and what that party did to our country, open borders, anybody could come in. As soon as I heard that, I said, every prison's going to be emptied out into our country. That's what happened. And we're straightening it out. And we just had numbers. We had the highest recruiting numbers in the history of our country going into police departments. And a year ago, we had the lowest numbers. You couldn't hire a
biggest
police.
change. Yeah.
Nobody's
From
ever
the
seen
lowest to the highest.
And the military now, Marines, the Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, every slot is, we have the best numbers we've ever had. We call it recruitment numbers. And we've never had anything like it. We had records on at every single level. But very important, the policemen. The policemen are joining forces now that we're having a hard time with policemen because we weren't protecting our police.
Yeah.
And we cherish our police. The police are great, and the firemen and everybody else. But we have the highest numbers that we've ever had, the most enthusiasm. Great enthusiasm and on trade and other things. We're doing great. We're taking in billions and billions of dollars. We made, 2 weeks ago, I gave them a little bit of a pause because, you have to show a little flexibility. But we go back to what we have to do. The markets have been very strong once they got used to it. But we were losing $2 billion a day. There's no company big like this. But
No.
This is the biggest deal ever made. Now we're making $3 billion a day. We're a great country, but we had stupid people running this country, and I can say it. But what they've done to us at the border should never and can never be forgotten. It's a sin, what they did, and you are helping us out, and we appreciate it.
Thanks. Actually, what you're doing with the border is remarkable. It has dropped, 95%? It's incredible.
As of this morning, 99%, 99.1% to be exact.
Why are those numbers not in the media?
Well, they get out with the fake news, like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They only like putting out because I think they hate our country actually.
Yeah,
But it's a shame. You're right. Isn't that a great question? Why doesn't the media? Why don't they put out numbers?
Yeah, 99%. It's crazy, right?
We're doing
It's
great.
a crazy turnaround.
Christy, could you maybe say a couple of words about the border? How we're doing?
It's just been absolutely phenomenal what a great leader can do. Clear direction. Our laws matter. we should only have people in our country that love us, and the Border Patrol and our ICE officers and law enforcement officers have done fantastic work. So we're proud of them. Now we just need to get the criminals and murderers and rapists and dangerous gang members and terrorist organizations out of our country. So, Mr. President Bukele, we thank you very much for your partnership. It has been wonderful for us to be able to have somewhere to send the worst of the worst and someone to partner with. And we'd like to continue that partnership because it's been a powerful message of consequences. Mr. President, you wanted people to know that there was consequences if you break our laws and harm our people and endanger families. And this is a clear consequence for the worst of the worst, that we have somewhere to put them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we even had this gang member from Venezuela, one of the ones you sent, and we interviewed him just to get some information, etc. from them. And he said, "Oh, well, I got arrested 6 times, but they released me the 6 times, so I should be released again." And then he said, "Well, what's the last thing you do?" And he said, "Well, I shot a cop in the leg, but I didn't kill him. I just shot him in the leg." And we're like, this guy was arrested 6 times here in the United States, 6 times. He was released 6 times, and in the he was released 5 times, and the last time he was sent to El Salvador, right? So he's not getting released. But the last time he shot a cop, actually, and he shot him in the leg. So these are, like you said, there's something broken.
It's the liberal establishment. But they're not running things anymore in this country, and we're run by, and I don't say conservative, I don't say anything, we're run by people with great common sense.
Yeah, common sense.
Because it's all common sense.
Yes.
It's not liberal conservative, it's common sense.
Exactly.
And, do you allow men to play in women's sports? Do you allow men to box your women and box? Because I know you have a lot of boxing.
That's violence.
That's abuse of a
violence
woman.
against women.
It's abuse of a woman.
Totally.
But we have people that fight to the death because they think men should be able to play in women's sports. And some of those sports, it wouldn't matter much, but it still matters. But some of them are very dangerous for women.
Some years ago, like you said, a decade ago or so, women rights movements were pressuring so that we enacted specific laws to avoid men abusing women. And I think those laws were great because there were a lot of men abusing women. But now some of the same people are trying to backtrack on that and actually trying to make new laws allowing men to abuse women in sports. So actually that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
It's crazy. They have weightlifting records, right?
Yeah.
A woman gets up, she's incredible. A guy gets up and beats her by 100 pounds. What are you going to do? A record that hadn't been broken in 18 years. They put on an ounce, quarter of an ounce, eighth of an ounce for 18 years. Now they have a guy come up, ping. The whole thing is crazy. But they continue to fight. And I don't like talking about it because I want to save it for just before the next election. I said to my people, don't even talk about it because they'll change. And but I watched this morning, there was a congressman fighting to the death for men to play against women in sports. And you say to yourself, why? What are they doing, right? What are they doing? But your country's not too big in that.
No, of course not. We're big in protecting women.
Good.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a very important form of protection, too.
And as you can see, most of my cabinet are women. So
that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's why you're.
And they're not DEI hires or anything. They're just great at what they do. Right?
That's right. This is very impressive.
Yeah,
this is a first. We've had women, but we've never had 3 of them right here. That's
4 and 3 men.
Look at what we have. You guys feel a little bit mistreated? That's good. I like it. We've been advanced. I've been very advanced in that regard too. We have Pam, who's been so fantastic. Christy, and the most powerful woman they say anywhere.
I know, exactly.
They're all afraid of Susie Wells. They say, oh, she's tough. Yeah. Most powerful woman in the world, according to magazines. What do I know? Yes. But I think she probably is.
Yeah, she probably is.
Yeah, she probably is.
Congratulations.
And Stephen, who's done such a great job. We have great people.
He's very famous too.
But we love working with him. He really lets them have it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no games.
No. It's very good.
He knows. Do you have any questions, please?
President Trump.
Go ahead, let's not start
Mr.
with
President.
CNN because they're so they're just so
Mr. President.
wrong. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. You repeatedly mentioned last night that Russia's attack on Ukraine was a mistake. What is the exact mistake? And had you given Putin a deadline to actually move toward a ceasefire?
The mistake was letting the war happen. If Biden were competent, and if Zelensky were competent, and I don't know that he is. We had a rough session with this guy over here. He just kept asking for more and more. That war should have never been allowed to happen. That war, I went 4 years and Putin wouldn't even bring it up. And as soon as the election was rigged and I wasn't here, that war started. There was no way that war should have been allowed to happen. And Biden should have stopped it. And you take a look at Putin. I'm not saying anybody's an angel. But I will tell you, I went 4 years and it wasn't even a question. He would never, and I told him, don't do it. You're not going to do it. And it was the apple of his eye, but there was no way that he would have done it. All you had to do is lower oil prices. If you lowered oil prices, Biden kept the prices so high because he made it impossible to get it. If you lowered oil prices, you would have never had the war. But you wouldn't have had it with me anyway. That war would have never happened. And I think it's a great abuse. So now what do? You get a country where 25% of its land is gone, and the best locations, where millions of people are killed. You know, you haven't reported accurately the death. And this was Biden's war, and I'm trying to stop it. And I think we're going to do a good job. I hope we're going to do it. They lose 2,500 young people a week, think on average. Now, they're Russians and they're Ukrainians, but it's 2,000. We don't care. It's like whatever it is.
Intolerable.
They're not from your country. They're not from mine, but I want to stop it. 2,500, it's a killing field. It's like the Civil War. You take a look. I look at the satellite pictures. This should not be happening in our time. Of course, our time can be pretty violent, as we know. But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
Have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles. You know, he's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war. Right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size, and then hope that people give you some missiles. If we didn't give them what we gave, remember, I gave them javelins. That's how they won their first big battle with the tanks that got stuck in the mud. And they took them out with javelins. They have an expression that Obama at the time, Obama gave them sheets and Trump gave them javelins. But just something that should have never happened. It's a really shame. The towns are destroyed. Towns and cities are, largely destroyed. They have the spires, the beautiful spires that go up. They say they were the most beautiful in the world in Ukraine for whatever reason, but the most beautiful in the world. They're mostly laying on their side, shattered and broken. And most importantly, you have millions of people dead. Millions of people dead because of 3 people. I would say 3 people. Let's say Putin, number 1. But let's say Biden, who had no idea what the hell he was doing, number 2, and Zelensky. And all I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing. And I think we're doing well in that regard. I think you'll have some very good proposals very soon.
Last question, sir. Have you attributed a motive, sir? Have you attributed a motive through the FBI investigation behind the attack on Governor Josh Shapiro over the weekend?
No, I haven't, but the attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job. And certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen.
Is a good relation with President Bukele the best guarantee that this time you won't terminate the temporary protected status?
I have a great relationship with this man. I have the best relationship with him. We've known each other. I've known him since he was a very young man, as I said, very, very young. And I was impressed. I said, look how this guy is. In fact, you sort of look like a teenager. You look like a teenager. I said, what kind of a country is this? He grew up well in the last 5 years.
Do you support the extension for nationals of El Salvador under temporary protected status?
Do you plan to ask him?
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him, President Bukele?
And you are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant, because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So we had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan to
But
ask
the
for
Supreme
anyone
Court is
to get
asking
it back?
to...
And what was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele, what is
Presidente
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to have suggested that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, you know, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous. Not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart. When they heard that this very low IQ president, and by the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, sir, I've never seen anybody get that kind of, that was the highest mark. I hope you're happy with that. Although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive, but I did do my physical and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I notice there's no question, so probably you are. But the cognitive, they said to me, sir, would you like to take a cognitive test? I said, did Biden take one? No. Did anybody take one? No, not too many people took them. I said, what about Obama? Did he take one? No, he didn't take one either. I said, let me be the only one to take one. But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take. But we had a great physical exam, so I know you're going to ask that. And the doctors who are total professionals, Walter Reed Medical Center, they're great people. And I visited a soldier that was badly wounded, incredible soldier, lost his leg, and spent a lot of time with him. I mean, great with his mother. And it was really a very great thing. They do a phenomenal job. I just want to say, Walter Reed, I was there for, 5-6 hours. You were there with me. But I took a full physical, and it came out perfecto, so that's good. That means you've got me for a little longer.
Would the U.S. be willing to pay for those facilities to be opened if new ones were going to be built?
I'd do something. We'd help them out. Yeah, we help them. They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam. I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that, Steve, okay?
President, how essential is it for you guys to be locking up these prisoners? And do you think more presidents should follow suit like you guys as far as taking a hard stance on crime here in the United States?
Well, I do. I think everybody has to. I mean, the president said it better than anybody. He said, you know, you have liberty and you have to have liberty, but to have liberty, not everybody is going to be good. And, you know, some are bad because they're sick. They're mentally deranged. They're bad.
Why do you
then you have to take them. If you're going to have a country, you're going to have to take those people out. And we've been doing that. But this was like an unforced error, they would call it, where we had people that may hate our country, or maybe they're just stupid people. I think they're probably stupid people more so. A lot of people said they did it for the vote. But I did better with Hispanic people than they did, because they always use Hispanic. I did better you people love me. I saw my poll numbers in your country up through the roof, right? 91%. No, some people think they do it for the vote. But they don't have to do it for the vote. They cheat, they're professional cheaters. That's about the only thing they do well. So we just have had a great relationship, and it's become bigger because of a strange thing that happened. I came back. We had no war in Ukraine. We had no war we had no October 7th Middle East problem. We had nothing. We had no inflation. We didn't have the Afghanistan most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. The Afghanistan not withdrawing, because I would have been out. I had it all set to bring people out with dignity and pride. That was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan. We didn't have any of that. You wouldn't have had the war with Russia, Ukraine. You wouldn't have had the Middle East problem because Iran was broke. They had no money because we had secondary sanctions on and lots of other sanctions. And now every single thing, got a problem with Iran, but I'll solve that problem. That's almost an easy one. We got to solve a war that should have never started, Ukraine and Russia, and we'll get that solved. And we have to solve problems, and we already solved inflation. If you look at the numbers are incredible, actually. The stock market's up, and we're not letting other countries take advantage of this country like they have for the last 40 years. So thank you very much. You have a question, please?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you so much. You scored another major investment win this morning when NVIDIA pledged to build its AI supercomputer, the first time ever, right here in the United States.
Thank you. That's a question I like. That's true.
What is your reaction to this announcement, sir, and how will this positively benefit Americans across the entire country?
Well, it's one of the biggest announcements you'll ever hear, because NVIDIA, as you know, controls that almost the entire sector, which is one of the most important sectors in the world, between chips and semiconductors and everything else. And they're the biggest. And the other biggest we already have coming in and spending $300 billion, as you know. They announced 2 weeks ago. But NVIDIA is so highly respected. And this was an announcement that a lot of people, I knew it was going to happen, but not to the extent that it happened. It's big. And the reason they did it is because of the election on November 5th and because of a thing called tariffs. As I said, the most beautiful word in the dictionary. After love, God, relationship, the press actually hit me and said, tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. What about family, love, God? I got hit even on that. You understand? I said, okay. So now I say it's my fifth most favorite word, because they get you on anything. But that NVIDIA, it's one of the great companies of the world, modern, super modern companies, controls segments that nobody, sort of controls the world in a sense, and they're coming in here in the biggest way with hundreds of billions of dollars. Not like millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and I'm honored by it. And I want to thank Jensen and all of the people that we deal with. They're great people, they're brilliant people. And without tariffs, they wouldn't be doing it. Okay? Thank you very much.
Are you considering additional sanctions against Russia after their latest attack? And do you have an update on the rate and when you might announce semiconductor
Well, I already
tariffs?
have sanctions on Russia. I put them there. If you remember, Nord Stream 2, that's the big pipeline that goes through Europe. I stopped it. That's Russia's pipeline, the largest pipeline, I think, in the world. Goes to Germany. And I stopped it. And when Biden came in, he approved it. And then they say, oh, I'm friendly with Russia. No. Putin said, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you when you're my enemy. I stopped the biggest economic job they ever had. I stopped it cold, right? It was dead. You know that, right? And Biden came in and he immediately approved it. What was that all about? And it's a pipeline that takes care of a lot of the needs. Now, it was a very controversial thing, but I stopped it, and Biden approved it. Question?
On tariffs?
No, not you. Not
Update today on potential semiconductor tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals.
What?
Semiconductor tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals we're going to do. We don't make our own drugs. our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, it's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come. And yeah, we're going to be doing that. That's going to be like we have on cars. We have, as you know, a 25% tariff on cars. We have a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And that's what that category fits right now.
Do you have a percentage in mind and a timeline?
I have a timeline, yeah, not too distant future. We're doing it because we want to make our own drugs. We're doing it because we want to make our own steel and aluminum, lumber, other things. And they're all coming in. We have record numbers, $7 trillion. Since I announced, like a month and a half ago, since I came in, we have over $7 trillion being invested in the country. We didn't have $1 trillion. We didn't have $500 billion with some of these guys. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. So we have the largest investment that we've ever heard of, and we're only 2 months in. And that'll continue at levels that you've never seen before. That's what's going to happen. And even the stock market's up today. It's we also had, you know, a lot of people didn't say it the way it was. We had the largest gain in the stock market in history on every single category last week. That was a nice game because we were getting a little hit because people didn't understand the power of our our country economically if you use it right. Do you have something to say on that, JD?
Yes, sir. I mean, look, for 40 years we have lost manufacturing capacity. Workers have seen their wages stagnate, and some of the most critical things that we need, from the pharmaceuticals, the drugs that we give to our children, the antibiotics that we give to our kids, to the weapons that we actually need to fight a war, if God forbid we had to fight a war, we don't make enough of that stuff. And so President Trump ran explicitly on changing that. Yes, as the President mentioned, it caused a little bit of disruption in the market, but I actually think over the long term, workers are going to benefit, stocks are going to go up, American businesses are going to benefit as we reinvest and reindustrialize our country.
And the auto workers and the Teamsters and all of the unions, you know, not traditionally Republican, but I'm winning those unions by, we're up 40, 50 points on the Democrats. They're losing everything. They're losing everything because they just have policies that are not believable. They fight for policies that are 5% popular, and nobody knows who the 5% are. I mean, nobody can find the 5%. But if you go back to Ohio, and by the way, we have the great championship team from Ohio coming in today, right?
Very big day.
And that's going to be a little bit later. And that'll be, if you want to stick around, I'll introduce you to some nice people. You'll see some very large people, right? You'll see some people that even you have not seen people like this. These are big, these are 6'7", 380 pounds with no fat. Okay, that's pretty good, right? But the team, the national championship team, is being honored today at the White House, so that'll be exciting. If you're around, you want to stay around, I'll have you up there. You can tell them all about your prison, how you have to behave. Okay. Who else?
Are those exemptions on electronics?
You said yesterday that you're making a decision on Iran very quickly. What do you mean by that? Is that a decision to strike Iran?
They have their problem very quickly. Iran wants to deal with us, but they don't know how. They really don't know how. We had a meeting with them on Saturday. We have another meeting scheduled next Saturday. I said, that's a long time. You know, that's a long time. So I think they might be tapping us along. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He can't have a nuclear weapon. Nobody can have. We can't have anybody having nuclear weapons. You know, we can't have nuclear weapons. And I think they're tapping us along because we're so used to dealing with stupid people in this country. And I had Iran perfect. You had no attacks. You would have never had October 7th in Israel, the attack by Hamas. Because Iran was broke. They were stone cold broke when I was president. And I don't want to do it. I want them to be a rich, great nation. The only thing is, one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And they got to go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us, I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Does that include a potential strike on Iranian nuclear facilities?
Of course it does.
Just a follow-up question, a clarification. You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What, do you think there's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too. And I'm all for it. Because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons, and some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. But he does a great job with that. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago now, 4 years ago. When I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's what happened. Jails. The jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened? Their crime went way down. But now Venezuela has other problems. You know what the problem is? They have no money.
Yeah.
Because I shut off their oil, and we put secondary tariffs because they're not doing what's right over there. They know what to do. We spoke to them. I spoke to them. They know what to do. But they have no money. Venezuela has no money. But Iran had no money. And Iran behaved so beautifully. And then Biden took all those secondary tariffs and tariffs on. I told China, you can't buy oil. If you buy oil from Iran, China, I told it to President Xi, then we no longer want you to do business with the United States of America. And those ships disappeared from that harbor so quickly. China. Get along great with China.
Are the talks with Iran productive? Do you want to continue that?
What?
The talks with Iran, do you believe those are productive? Do you want to continue that?
I think Iran could be a great country as long as it doesn't have nuclear weapons. If they have nuclear weapons, they'll never get a chance to be a great country. They will never get a chance. It won't even come close.
Sir, on tariffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yesterday you mentioned short-lived product exemptions. Which specific products are you considering, and how long is short-lived? Weeks, months?
I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places, and they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here, but they need a little bit of time. So I'm talking about things like that.
What about any Apple products, other cell phones?
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. And you have to be. You just can't have a wall and you'll only go. No, sometimes you have to go around it, under it, or above it. There'll be maybe things coming up. I speak to Tim Cook. I helped Tim Cook recently, and that whole business. I don't want to hurt anybody, but the end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country. We're the greatest economic power in the world if we're smart. If we're not smart, we're going to hurt our country very badly. We lost with China over the Biden years trillions of dollars on trade. Trillions of dollars. And he let them fleece us. And we can't do that anymore. And you know what? I don't blame China at all. I don't blame President Xi. I like him. He likes me. I mean, you know, who knows? Who the hell cares?
Do you have any updates on
But
talks
you know
with
what?
China?
What?
Do you have any updates with talks with China?
No, let me just tell you this. I don't blame China. I don't blame Vietnam. I see their meeting today. Is that wonderful? That's a lovely meeting. They're meeting, like trying to figure out how do we screw the United States of America. Don't forget, the European Union was formed to do just that. The European Union was formed to hurt the United States and on trade. And they get us on NATO because they don't pay their bills. But now, since I got involved, they have been paying their bills. I took in over $600 billion for NATO. Nobody took in anything. I mean, they were all delinquent. They had 8 nations out of 28 paid their bills. The rest of them were way delinquent. And I said, if you don't pay your bills, we're not going to protect you anymore. And the money poured in, over 600. The Secretary General last week made that statement. He said, I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't get anybody to pay because the United States was footing the bill for NATO. Well, we got hurt there, and we got hurt on trade, likewise, European Union. And they've got to come to the table. And they're trying to. They're trying to. But the European Union has taken terrible advantage. They don't take our food products. They don't take our cars. We have millions of their cars, BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, many others. They come in by the millions. They don't take. There are no Chevrolets in Munich, I can tell you that. I said to Angela Merkel when she was there, as she was letting millions of people infiltrate Germany, which was not so good we would call them illegal immigrants, but she made them legal. But I said to her, and I get along with her very well, I said, how many Chevrolets do we have in Munich or Frankfurt? Why, none, Donald, none. I said, you're right. And yet we take in millions and millions of cars. No, those days are over. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Press. Thank you, Press. Thank you, guys. Mr. President, do you have any comment on the FTC's case against Meta and Mark Zuckerberg? Thank you, Press. Thank you, Press.
Thank you, Nayib.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Press. Let's go. Thank you. Let's go. Oh, thanks, guys. Thank you, Press. Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep coming. Keep going. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
There they go. There they go. That was the... Okay, so we saw President Trump appear with El Salvador President Bukele. So you saw that they talked in the meeting. They were asked about the man who the Trump administration has said that they mistakenly sent a man to El Salvador, deported a man to El Salvador, who there was a court ruling previously in the U.S. saying you're not allowed to deport him to El Salvador. And the Supreme Court ruled, I believe it was Saturday, that the U.S. needed to facilitate his being brought back to the U.S. So both Trump and Bukele showed no sign in that meeting of wanting to bring him back to the U.S. So that's certainly, I see nothing in that meeting suggesting that the U.S. government or Bukele is going to work to get him back to the U.S. In fact, if I remember right, 2 members of the administration, Pam Bondi and Stephen Miller, I believe claimed that the Supreme Court ruling was something like, if El Salvador says they want to bring him back, then the U.S. needs to facilitate that. But I don't remember any kind of reporting saying that was part of the ruling. I also just read something from CBS News's, where is it here if I can pull it up, Melissa Quinn, who said that in the Supreme Court ruling order there was no qualifier of if El Salvador wants to return him. Anyways, though, is this going to be some sort of constitutional crisis? Because, again, as far as I'm aware, the Supreme Court has said that the administration needs to facilitate his coming back. So is the Trump administration just going to be like, well, we're not bringing him back? I don't know. You know, something else that happened today is a Senator Chris Van Hollen. So it'll be very interesting to see where this all goes. Where is it here? I saw a report about Chris Van Hollen today, relevant to this. Oops, hold on. I'll tell you what he said. Yes, Chris Van Hollen, there's a bunch of reporting about this, wrote a letter to, Chris Van Hollen said, he is a U.S. Senator, and said that, well, I should see if I can get you the actual copy of the letter. That would be the best thing. Hold on, let me show you what he said. So I just wonder where this whole thing is going. Chris Van Hollen, by the way, is a senator from Maryland, which is where Abrego Garcia, he's a Democrat from Maryland, which is where Abrego Garcia, the man who the Trump administration said they mistakenly sent to Maryland, mistakenly deported to El Salvador, he was living in Maryland. So Chris Van Hollen said today, yeah, I've seen a couple of posts of this letter. Mackenzie Frost, reporter, posted it. Allie Bradley posted it. But there's a letter. Let me mention this letter. In this letter, Chris Van Hollen said that the U.S. Supreme Court, Senator Van Hollen said the U.S. Supreme Court ruled unanimously that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was wrongly deported to a prison in El Salvador. And he said, Senator Van Hollen said, I have met with Mr. Abrego Garcia's wife, mother, and brother. And he said he's worried by the continued what he calls illegal confinement of Abrego Garcia. And Allie Bradley reports, well, she's with News Nation. She says that if Abrego Garcia is not returned by midweek, Senator Van Hollen says he intends to travel to El Salvador. And then another report about this from Mackenzie Frost with Fox Baltimore in Maryland says that Chris Van Hollen, Senator Van Hollen said, if Kilmar is not home by midweek, I plan to travel to El Salvador this week to check on his condition and discuss his release. So what's going to happen with this? We have a Supreme Court ruling that, as far as I'm aware, and from the reporting I'm seeing, says that, and I'm not a legal expert, but as far as I'm aware, it says that the U.S. federal government needs to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the United States from El Salvador. But we just saw an appearance with President Trump and Nayib Bukele, where neither of them gave any kind of sense that they were going to return him, and seemed to give every kind of indication that they're not going to return him. So what is going? I mean, are we going to have a constitutional crisis here? I don't know. I might have to ask you a poll question. So that was, I mean, to me, that was the big headline of that appearance. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to ask you guys, will Abrego Garcia, will he be returned to the U.S.? I don't mean in like 10 years, but I'm going to ask this poll, will Abrego Garcia be returned to the U.S.? I have no idea. I'm asking this poll right now, and then I'll tell you what you guys say about it. Let me just post it right now. But that was certainly a very intriguing part of that meeting. Hang on, I'm just getting the poll posted here. And then Secretary of State Rubio said something like, how can the court think it can tell us it could conduct foreign policy? Again, seeing no signs that the administration intends to go along to make any effort to return this person. You can see this from AP. Hold on, I'll show you this real quick. Where is it here? Bondi, in that meeting, you can see it right there from AP. Bondi, U.S. would provide plane if El Salvador returns Abrego Garcia, which Bukele called preposterous. Trump referred questions about Abrego Garcia to Attorney General Pam Bondi, who said he was illegally in the U.S. and that courts have ruled that he was a member of the MS-13 gang. I'd have to check on that too. I'm not so about what courts have actually ruled in the public evidence and all of that stuff. I've seen some stuff that's different from that, but I would have to check on it. Pam Bondi, Attorney General, said it's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. She called the issue international matters and foreign affairs and said the U.S. would facilitate his return if El Salvador wanted to send him back by providing an airplane. Bukele was asked if he plans to return Abrego Garcia, and he asked how he could return him and said it was preposterous. He called Abrego Garcia a terrorist and said he had no power to return Abrego Garcia to the United States. In a complaint, Abrego Garcia's lawyers have disputed the government claims that he was in a gang. All right, I asked you guys, I said, I did a poll question. And I said, will Abrego Garcia actually be returned to the United States? So let me show you what you guys said about this. If I can get it up on the screen here. All right, over there on YouTube. Hold on a second here. I'm hearing two of me. Over on YouTube, here is what the vote is. The vote on YouTube is you'll see it in a second. 79% of you say no. 21% say yes. So YouTube is not thinking generally, our YouTube viewers, most of you do not think he's going to get returned to the U.S. On Facebook, I didn't even post it on Facebook yet. I don't think. Oops. I'm sorry, Facebook. I'll post it and then right now and then. Tell people what you are saying. And here is what people on Twitch are saying about it. The poll on Twitch result is, wow, it is almost the exact same as YouTube. 80% on Twitch and 79% on YouTube say he will not be returned to the U.S. Oops, sorry, you can't see the YouTube thing now. I need to move it up more. I'll check on Facebook in a second. By the way, I want to say a quick thanks so much to Ryan Vegan Tech or Vegan Tech. Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate it. Thank you also, Bebop and Rocksteady, for your support. Who says, I don't believe this administration is concerned about this issue hurting them in the least. Thank you, Leon Yoder, for your support. Leon Yoder, thanks so much for your support. Unit 285. The Real LP, thanks for your support. All That's Random, thanks for being a member. Also, Jennifer Whittington and Owl Hippie, and Widow Unscripted, and Wonka, and Green Giant, and La Calma. Thanks for your support. And let's see. All right, so YouTube and Twitch, most of you don't think he's coming, being brought back to the U.S. And how about on Facebook? Over on Facebook, the current polling result is, let me check, 93% on Facebook thinks no, he is not going to be brought back to the U.S. Hang on one moment here. One moment. Give me one moment. Oh. I should change the headline because the meeting is, because we already showed you the video. I'm trying to pull up some background on the Supreme Court ruling so you can see it. Oh, here, there's already something posted by AP about what happened in the meeting today. Hold on, you'll see it. El Salvador President Bukele says he won't be releasing Kilmar Abrego Garcia back to the U.S. There they are a short while ago at the White House. President Trump's top advisors and Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, said today they had no basis for the small Central American nation to return a Maryland man who was wrongly deported there last month. Trump administration officials emphasized that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was sent to a notorious gang prison in El Salvador, was a citizen of that country, and that the U.S., they claim, has no say in his future. And Bukele, who has been a vital partner for the Trump administration in its deportation efforts, said, "Of course I'm not going to release him back to U.S. soil. The question is preposterous," Bukele said. "I don't have the power to return him to the United States." Should El Salvador want to return him, the U.S. would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane, said Attorney General Pam Bondi. She added he was illegally in our country. You can see here in the same article, it says, the Supreme Court has ruled against the administration the Supreme Court has called for the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia, who had an immigration court order preventing his deportation to his native country over fears of gang persecution. So I don't know where that is all going. And here is, going back a few days ago, here's something about that ruling. Right here. This is from April 11th, AP. The Supreme Court on Thursday said the Trump administration must work to bring back a Maryland man who was mistakenly deported in El Salvador, rejecting the administration's emergency appeal. The court acted in the case of Kilmar Abrigo Garcia, a Salvadoran citizen who had an immigration court order preventing his deportation to his native country over fears he would face persecution from local gangs. U.S. District Judge Paula Zenas had ordered Abrigo Garcia, now being held in a notorious Salvadoran prison, returned to the U.S. by midnight Monday. The Supreme Court said the order from the district judge properly requires the government to facilitate Abrigo Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. By the way, he had a permit from the Homeland. He had a permit from the Homeland Security Department to legally work in the U.S. and was a sheet metal apprentice pursuing a journeyman license. His attorney said his wife is a U.S. citizen. I don't think this is going to be the last you're hearing about this story. We're probably going to be hearing a lot more about this story. Let me take some comments from you guys. That's a leftist interpretation. I don't believe it is a leftist interpretation of the Supreme Court ruling, by the way. I'm pretty confident of that. I was not hearing anything, and I have not seen any kind of... by the way, I read through what I think is the ruling, but I'm not positive, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to say that. I have never seen a single report saying anything about the Supreme Court saying that the ruling was, if El Salvador wants to send him back, then the U.S. government needs to facilitate it. So I'm pretty confident that was not the ruling. That's not being a leftist. That's just factually stating what the ruling is. Now, if someone can present to me a copy of the Supreme Court ruling where they say that, I will admit I'm wrong. But given that it's been several days and I've been seeing no reporting on anything about that, my guess is that's not the ruling. And that's not a leftist interpretation. Bukele believes you can't force the El Salvador president to return a prisoner. Now, to be clear, the reason he is in prison in El Salvador is that the U.S. government is paying El Salvador to put him in prison. But I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to weigh in on specific legal questions about somebody being in another country and all of that stuff. But again, the Supreme Court and in the possession of another country and another country's prison. But again, the Supreme Court did say that the U.S. needs to facilitate his return. No, someone mentioned Robert Law says the gay barber. So that's a different person. There are several people who there have been news stories about where advocates and people who know these people claim that they were deported as alleged Venezuelan gang members to this prison. And these advocates for these people say they are not Venezuelan gang members. That's a different story those are different people than this person. Abrego Garcia is not Venezuelan. He's from El Salvador. He was in the U.S., and he was sent to an El Salvador prison. The same prison that hundreds of Venezuelans have been sent to by the Trump administration, claiming they are gang members. But the story you might have read about, again, the viewer said the gay barber. There's been different stories about that person. That's a different person. It's not the same person. Here's another story about what the Supreme Court ruled this is from last Thursday. This is a Reuters story. U.S. Supreme Court tells administration to facilitate return of Salvadoran man deported in error. There is the man right there, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The U.S. Supreme Court directed President Trump's administration on Thursday to facilitate the return of the United States of a Salvadoran man who the government has acknowledged was deported in error to El Salvador. The court's decision came after the Justice Department asked the justices to throw out an April 4th order by the U.S. District Court Judge Paul Azinas requiring the administration to facilitate and effectuate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The court, in an unsigned decision, said the judge's order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. So we'll see where this all goes. Corn Dog says he is on his own. No, there's no press conference scheduled today for Bukele and Trump. There's no press conference. That was the appearance that was scheduled. Looks like Judd Parker thinks he's gone, never to return. By the way, I appreciate our moderators. Oops, I didn't end the poll on YouTube. I appreciate our moderators who have been here. Let me thank them real quick. All right. Hold on a second here. Bash and Girl, Matthew Kohai 3, thank you. Over there on Twitch. And Linda Belk, Larry, Misha on X. And hold on a second here. Kay Lowry Body over there on Facebook. Margaret Riley, thank you. Paul Anderson. Thanks Sharon Klassen Goslin for subscribing over there on Facebook. And our YouTube moderators as well. Thank you. Danny James over there. All right. Oh, and thanks SoCal SoCo for your support. SoCal SoCo, thanks for your support, but you're getting, I'm sorry, I just can't have that in the chat. So if you can come back tomorrow to the chat, if you can respect the rules of the chat. I just, if you're not going to respect the rules of the chat, you can't be chatting. We have rules, you need to respect them. Again, I just want to say this again. So what I was saying to you guys is, I'm pretty confident that the Supreme Court did not say, that they didn't say that their ruling wasn't, if El Salvador wants to return him, then you need to facilitate that. That was not their ruling. I believe I've actually looked through the ruling, but I'm not positive, so I don't want to say that. But all the reporting I've seen for 3 days says that. I've seen quotes from the ruling saying that. I see people, experts today, saying that. So when I say to you on the air, I don't think that's the correct interpretation. My understanding is that what they said is you need to facilitate it. And then I have several people saying in the chat, that's a leftist interpretation. My response to that is just, no, it's a factual interpretation. There's no left or right. I'm just saying this is, from all my understanding and everything I see out there, I'm pretty confident that's what they said. And that's not being a leftist. So if you're yelling at me for being a leftist, I don't really know what to make of that. I don't know what to do about that. I mean, maybe, I'm sorry if that's not what you want to hear, but that doesn't mean it's leftist. And I'd say the same thing if somebody said it's a rightist interpretation. It's not, I'm just telling you what they said in their ruling. I don't care whether it's one side or the other that wants to hear it. I see a lot of people getting angry about it. I don't know why everybody's yelling at me and getting angry. Anyways, I think it's time to wrap up the stream. So, but again, this is not the last we're going to hear about this story. I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about it. And we'll have to see whether the administration moves to facilitate his return or not. Okay, I'm not leaving because of that. We were going to wrap up the stream anyway. The point of the stream was to show you the visit, and mention what I think is the big thing of that is the discussion and the visit about Abrigo Garcia. Thanks, Ray Paul Picks, for shouting out the mods, by the way. Okay, anyways. We are going to be, when there's more big developments in the news about whatever, we will come on the air and cover it. For now, we are wrapping up this stream. I am very interested in seeing what happens with this going forward. And also, there's the whole other issue of questions about, there's other issues surrounding the people being sent to Venezuela, which I'm not going to get all into now, but there's certainly other issues about the planes being ordered to be turned around, but not being turned around, and some claims that say that some people there are not actually gang members, and again, all of these issues, controversies going on, and so I'm sure these are going to be in the news more, and we very well might end up reporting on them. So we have different sides saying different things. So more to come on all this, but I really appreciate you being here for our stream. And thanks to everybody who's been participating in the chat as well. And we will bring you more news when it happens. subscribe and follow Agenda Free TV if you want. If you want to see more coverage, we cover all kinds of breaking news here without an agenda. Agenda Free TV, and also I will post updates on my X account when I'm not on the air, which is @Lookner. You can follow me there. Oops, you'll see it in a second. @Lookner. You can follow me there for breaking news updates. And sign up for the notifications. You know, I can't tell you in advance when big news is going to happen. So if you don't want to miss a stream, probably the best way to not miss a stream is to sign up for our free notifications because they work really well. They're really reliable. You get sent a notification whenever we're going live. And it's easy to sign up. The mods will post a link in the chat to the notification sign up. We do that through Discord. So you can sign up for the notifications there. Speaking of the mods, thank you again so much for our moderators. We've just done 2 streams in a row, and our moderators were there. They're the ones who allow us to have chats to keep things civil in the chat. So thank you for all of our moderators. Again, Danny James over there, Beth Mythical, all of our YouTube moderators, thank you so much. Linda Bell, Glary, Misha on X, Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley, Paul Anderson on Facebook, our Twitch moderators, Bastion Girl, Matthew Kohai 3, all of our other Twitch moderators, thank you. Thanks also to everybody who donated to the channel. It's super nice of you. I really appreciate it. That's what allows the channel to exist, is your support. Hopefully I got everybody during the broadcast. I thanked Ray Paul's Picks. Paper City Gamer, thanks for your support over there on Twitch. And everybody else I thanked earlier. If you ever want to donate, you can go to agendafree.tv, agendafree.tv. But thanks so much for supporting the channel. And also, what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, if you missed it, you can see we covered the Blue Origin space launch where Katy Perry, Gayle King, Lauren Sanchez, and 3 other women went to space in a Blue Origin space launch vehicle. So we covered that before this. You can go check that out if you haven't checked it out, if you want to see that. That was interesting to see. Hey, we also have a chat. You can chat with other viewers when we're not live. A lot of our viewers like doing that. It's free. It's on Discord. If you're interested in checking it out, it's the same link as the free notifications link. So check out the chat over on Discord. Thanks so much to our Discord mods for all of your help with everything. By the way, another good way to find out when we're going live is follow us on X @AgendaFreeTV on X. For those of you on X, I always post there before we go live @AgendaFreeTV. I post updates about the channel there too. And oh, thanks so much to Ronald Kane. Hey, Ronald, thank you so much. Very kind of you. Really appreciate that. Ronald Kane. Thank you, Ronald. And oh, for those of you who watch on YouTube, I would suggest turning the YouTube notifications on. Another good way to find out when we're live. But it's a little tricky turning the YouTube notifications on. Here's how you got to do it if you watch on YouTube. Here's how you turn the notifications on. You have to subscribe on YouTube. And then after you subscribe on YouTube, you click the bell and then you choose all notifications. So make sure, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you have the bell checked and the notifications chosen, all notifications chosen. All right, I want to shout out some other folks here, our Twitch subscribers. Thanks so much for supporting the channel by subscribing on Twitch. Jazzy Renee, and Gina Pina, Stunned in the North, Atakano Luke, Nikki Newark, The Sugaro, Matthew Kohai 3, ZZGGYY, all of our other, Wall Street Shaggy, all of our other Twitch subscribers. Thank you so much for subscribing there. Chi-Town, Deke, thanks for your support as well. Big Chief Rick, thanks for subscribing. Over and all of our other subscribers there, our Facebook subscribers. Thank you so much, Sharon Klassen Goslin, Michael Clayton, Robert Rial II, Lou Green, Eve Richards, Jennifer Ellers, Margaret Riley, Kay Lowry Body, and all of our other Facebook subscribers. Thank you so much for your support. Our YouTube members, thank you. M. Shep, Roger Shoemaker, Cam Research, Christina Dill, Jesse's Girl, Cheryl Simpson, Queen of the South, Melissa Sibanchik, Chris N., Anne, Slot Lady, Joel Brown, Callie Graham, Ethereal Planet, Loki, Matt, Confidence in God, Jesse's Girl, Aaron McCune, Gary Baines. Thank you for being YouTube members. Thanks to all of our other viewers as well. Much appreciate everybody tuning in. Hold on a second here. Thank you, Wilbur M. for watching. Christy Claft, thanks for watching. All right, we're wrapping this up. Anne Marie, Kevin Groves, Kirby Cousins over on Facebook. Sly Mango, I think it is. Sly Mango on Twitch. Sly Mango. All right, that's it. We're wrapping it up. X Kyle 2. And the helicopter crash, I mean, if we might do another, depending on the updates, we will cover more. I don't have a lot to update on that right now. So I posted a link to a really good video about the helicopter crash by Blanco Lirio on YouTube, which I would suggest watching. Blanco Lirio posted a very good update about it. And he's an aviation expert. All right, that is it right now. You've been watching our coverage of the El Salvador president. Oh, you know what I might not have done? Hold on, let me check something here. Oh, by the way, John Turpin says, was he a naturalized citizen of the U.S.? No, Abrego Garcia is not a citizen of the U.S. He is not a citizen. Okay. All right. That is it for now. Thank you guys for watching. And, oops, hold on a second here. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything else. Thank you guys so much for watching. If there's big news later today, we'll come on and cover it. That's it for now. I really appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you soon with more live breaking news coverage right here at Agenda Free TV.